各位弟兄姐妹，大家平安。
And peace to all the brothers and sisters.
我们读经读到《申命记》，
And we have read until Deuteronomy for our daily reading.
那最近家父是胰腺癌第4期。
And recently, my father has spleen cancer, 4th stage.
他已经走到人生最后的旅程。
And he has walked towards the end of his life journey.
那我们会接到《申命记》也在谈到人摩西一生的最后旅程。
And we notice that the book of Deuteronomy also talks about the end of the life for Moses.
所以今天晚上我想跟大家一起来分享摩西一生的最后旅程。
And tonight I'd like to share with all of you the end journey of Moses' life.
我想要来分享他最后的一个心愿。
And wanted to share one of his last wishes.
他最后的终点站。
And his ultimate destination.
跟他最后的行程，我们盼望从这3点来从圣经上得到学习。
And also his end journey, and from these 3 points we can study from within the Bible.
我们来看《申命记》的第3章。
And let's turn to Deuteronomy chapter 3.
《申命记》的第3章。
Deuteronomy chapter 3.
第3章，这里是在谈到他曾经跟神恳求，将来他可以进到迦南地，这是他一生当中呢最后的期盼。
And here he's pleading to God that hopefully at the end of his life that he can enter into the land of Canaan.
但是神不允许他这个最后的这个祈求。
But God did not grant his last wishes.
我们来读《申命记》第3章的23到29。
And Deuteronomy chapter 3 from verse 23 to 29.
23到29。
From verse 23 to 29.
那时我恳求主说，23、24，主啊，
24.
你已将你的大力大能显给仆人看，在天上，在地下，有什么神能向你行事，像你有大能的作为呢？求你容我过去，看约旦河那边的美地，就是那佳美的山地和黎巴嫩。但主因你们的缘故向我发怒，不应允我，对我说：罢了，你不要向我再提这事，你且上毗斯加山顶去，向东西南北举目观看，我必因为你必不能过这约旦河，你却要嘱咐耶稣亚，勉励他，使他壮胆，因为他必在这百姓面前过去，使他们承受你所要观看之地。29。于是我们住在伯昆尔对面的谷中。这边提到摩西在跟百姓讲的一件事情。
And here talks about that something Moses was speaking that spoke to the people.
那我觉得这个都是摩西他一生的心愿，甚至最后都没有放弃的一个祈求。
And I personally feel that this is one of the things and Moses' last wish, even until the very end of his life.
因为如果你读29节他们那个时候是住在伯昆尔对面的谷中。
And because if you read verse 29, at the time they stayed in the valley opposite of Beth Peor.
如果你看34章的第6节，摩西就是神将摩西埋在摩押地伯昆尔对面的谷中，所以呢，他们住的这个地方呢，后来也是摩西埋葬的地方。
And so if you read Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 2, that the place that they, or verse 6, verse 6, that this was the place that God buried him in the valley of the land of Moab, opposite of Beth Peor.
所以这是到他生命的最后的一个时期。
And this was until his final moments in life.
他还在提到过去他曾经恳求神，而神拒绝他的这个心愿。
And he talked about that in the past that he had asked God of this, but God has refused to grant him his wish.
所以我们看到他这一辈子有一个没有办法再祈求的一种祈求，就是因为神不让他再说了，可是这是他最后的心愿。
But we realize that in his lifetime that this was something that that he can't really ask for because God would not allow it. But this was something that he wanted. He wanted a wish.
所以23节他说：“我那时候恳求神。”
And so verse 23 it says that I pleaded to God.
容我过去看，25节，让我过去看一看。
And to allow me to go over there to look.
如果你看24节他是说没有什么神像主这样有大能力的作为了。
And it says that in verse 24 that there's no greatness and more mightier than the doings of God.
摩西到晚年呢，他说到神已经将神的大力大能呢显给摩西看了。
And so Moses had said that towards the end of his life that God has shown him his power and strength.
如果你读生命记的最后2节最后一章的最后2节。
And if you read the last 2 verses in the book of Deuteronomy,
或者是最后3节，这边谈到说没有一个人像摩西一样是神面对面所认识的。
And there was actually nobody like Moses that can face God face to face.
那神怎么样打发他在埃及地向法老并全地行一切的神迹奇事，又在以色列众人面前显大能的手行一切可畏的事情最后就在谈神呢借着摩西的手行一切大而可畏的事情。
And in all the signs and wonders which the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt before Pharaoh, before all his servants and all his land, at the end it says that, and by all that the mighty power, all the great terror which Moses performed in the sight of all Israel.
所以人世间可能很少像摩西这样子真正能够目睹、见证、了解神的大能大力。
So in mankind, there's really nobody else that can be like Moses that personally witnessed and saw God face to face and saw his grandeur works.
所以他基本上是讲说神你凡事都能那可不可以也让我过去看一下？
And so he pleaded to God that you're capable of all things. Would you be able to allow me to go over and take a peek?
他可能想到过去他很多的祈求都能够改变神的心意。
And he felt that throughout his pleading that it's possible that he can change the way that God would make decisions.
比如说没有人可以见神的面。
And for example, nobody can see God face to face.
但是摩西祈求我要见神的荣耀，你的荣耀。结果神呢，虽然没有让他看面，至少可以让他看到背。
But Moses asked God to see his glory, and although Moses wasn't able to see God face on, but he was able to see the glory from the back.
比如说埃及人以色列人拜金牛犊之后，神要杀灭全部的以色列人。
And also, after the Israelites worshiped the golden calf, God was to destroy all the multitude of Israel.
摩西站在破口为百姓代求。
But Moses stood in front of the breach and pleaded on behalf of the people.
神又改变心意没有那个时候消灭以色列人。
So God changed his mind and decided not to destroy the Israelites at the time.
摩西是一个很忠心的工人这是他晚年的心愿。
And Moses was actually was a very loyal and faithful servant, and this was one of his wish towards the end.
他特别强调，真的呢约旦河的那一边是一个美地是牛奶以蜜之地
And he indeed described that on the other side of the Jordan River, it's a land of flowing with milk and honey.
那里有漂亮的山，还有黎巴嫩的香柏树。
and there are beautiful, pleasant mountains and the trees of Lebanon.
但是神说罢了，你不要再提这事了。26节啊，
And 26, but Lord was angry with him and said, do not, enough of that, speak of no more of me of this matter.
所以你可以感觉到，好像神不讲这句话，摩西会一直提，一直提到他快死的时候都要提。
And because if you realize that if God did not speak of this, then Moses will continue to plead until his death.
神跟他讲罢了那圣经上讲说，摩西祷告神，好像朋友跟朋友在讲话一样。
And so God said enough of that. And the Bible recorded that when Moses prayed to God, it seems like it's a friend talking to another friend.
所以这个神大概意思就说，哎呀，我们是好朋友这个罢了，不要再说了，说了伤感情了。
And so it seems like God perceived themselves as good friends. So he told Moses to stop talking about this because otherwise it's going to hurt our relationship.
所以你发觉到说即使你在忠心，你一辈子服侍神，有时候你有一个遗憾，有一个心愿，神也不一定给你来成全。
And you realize that even though you're serving God all of your life, but maybe you have some sort of regret in your life or a wish that you want God to fulfill, but he may not listen to you and grant you the wish.
耶稣也是在神的家尽忠。
And so Jesus was also very faithful in the house of God.
他有一个心愿不要受十字架，不要喝苦杯。
And he had a wish was not to suffer on the cross and to carry this bitter cup.
神也不应允他的祈求。
But God did not allow and grant his request.
保罗也是一个忠心的工人。
And so Paul was also a very loyal and faithful
他
worker.
3次祷告一根刺从他的身上除掉。
And he prayed 3 times that he want this throne removed from his body.
神也没有听他的祈求。
But God did not listen to his pleading.
所以有时候我们有一个遗憾，我们有一个心愿但是神是掌管我们生命的神他不一定要听我们。
And so sometimes we may have a wish or we may have a regret. And God, although he's the ruler of all things, then he may not grant us our wish.
那为什么神呢不允许摩西的祈求呢？
And why was it that God did not allow and grant Moses' request?
这是小弟的感想。我们来看诗篇90篇摩西在作诗的时候自己这样讲
And this is my own thinking that let's turn to Psalm chapter 90. When he composed this hymn, he said it himself.
诗篇90篇的第8节。
And Psalm chapter 90 verse 8.
90篇第8节。
Psalm chapter 90 verse 8.
你将我们的罪孽摆在你面前，90篇第8节，将我们的隐恶摆在你的面光之中。为什么神不允许他进迦南地因为在米利巴那个事件当中呢，摩西生气了，摩西犯罪了。
And so you have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your countenance. And why did not God allow his request? Because of the incidents at Meribah that he provoked God to anger.
那这个罪孽呢是摆在神面前，摆在他的面光之中
And so this iniquities was placed in front of God and under his countenance.
21节，90篇11节。
Chapter 90 verse 11.
谁晓得你愤怒的权势？谁按着你该受的敬畏？晓得你的愤怒呢？
And who knows the power of your anger? For as the fear of you, so is your wrath.
所以当时摩西不尊敬神，神真的生气了。
And so Moses did not respect God at the time, so God was really angered.
所以我们应当要按照神该受的敬畏呢来敬畏神。
And so we have to respect God with all the respect that is due.
所以摩西啊，我们再看摩西，我们再回到第3章，摩西在谈这个历史事件的时候呢，你有没有觉得他在抱怨呢，或是从此不相信神了呢？
Let's turn back to Deuteronomy chapter 3. So when Moses was talking about this historical event, do you sense that he was complaining or grumbling against God?
当然我们没有这种感觉，
And of course not. We don't have this feeling.
我们只觉得摩西可能感到人生有一点点遗憾，
And we only feel that maybe Moses felt a little regret in his
其
life.
实人生有一些遗憾呢，只是让我们活着更像一个人呢。
And actually, in life, we have some regretfulness is actually to allow us to live more like a human.
那这是我们看到摩西生命有一个不能说的一个心愿，或者是他有一个最后的一个心愿。
And so this was something that Moses, one of his wishes that he cannot dare to talk about or say.
因为神说罢了，你不要再提这事了，但不代表他没有这个最终的心愿。
And so God did not want him to continue on, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have this wish or wishful thinking.
我们来看《申命记》的32章。
And let's turn to Deuteronomy chapter 32.
32章这是神吩咐摩西呢，亲口告诉他，你人生旅程的最后一站就是在尼坡山的山顶。
And so this is when God personally told Moses that at the end of his life, he's going to be on top of Mount Nebo.
所以他最后的心愿人生的一生的最后旅程，他有他的心愿，然后这是他最后的终点站。
And so at the very end of his life journey, and he still have this wish, and this is towards the end of his life.
我们来读48节到52节，32章48节到52节。
And let's read chapter 32, verse 48 to 52.
48节到52节。
Chapter 48 to verse 48 to 52.
32章48节。
Chapter 32, verse 48.
当日主吩咐摩西说：“你上这亚巴林山中的尼坡山去，在摩押地与耶利哥相对，观看我要赐给以色列为业的迦南地。你必死在所登的山上，归你列祖去，像你哥哥亚伦死在何烈山上，归他的列祖一样。因为你在逊的旷野加底斯的米利巴水，在以色列人中没有尊我为圣，得罪了我。我所赐给以色列人的地，你可以远远的观看，却不得进去。”刚刚我们读那个最后的心愿是摩西告诉以色列人的一件事情，这里呢在谈同样一件事情，但是是神吩咐摩西的一件事情。
And so what we read earlier was the one of the things that Moses said to the Israelites, but here records that how the Lord spoke to Moses towards his end time.
那我们如果仔细看50节，神就提到说呢，你要排座山但是到山上的时候呢，你要跟你哥哥一样就归到你的列祖了。
And if we read verse 50, it says that you will die on a mountain which is sent and gather to your people, just as Aaron, your brother, died on Mount Hor. And so he will be buried alone with his ancestors.
所以这个山顶就是他人生旅程的终点站。
So the top of the mountain will be the end of his life journey.
我们人生的里程有时候像坐火车一样
And so sometime our life journey is actually similar to riding a train.
每个人都有上车的时间，也有下车的时间。
And everyone would have the time to board the train or get off the train.
有的人在这个火车上坐的比较久，有的人坐的比较短。
And some people would be on the train for a longer period than others.
但是每个人都有一个终点站要下车。
But ultimately, there will be a final destination that everyone would need to get off.
摩西活到120岁，
And Moses lived until 20岁, 20 years old.
120岁。
120 years old.
耶稣活到33岁。
And Jesus lived to about 33 years old.
每个人都要下车。
And everyone will need to get off.
也不晓得我们什么时候是我们自己的终点站。
And we don't know when we arrive at our final destination.
我一直觉得生命也像一本书，它不在乎长短，是在乎它的精彩。
And I often feel like life is like a book. It doesn't matter if it's long or short, but how brilliant it is.
传道书8章8节在讲，无人可以掌管生命。
In Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 8, record that nobody can control life.
没有人可以将生命留住，
And nobody can actually keep life.
也没有人有权利可以掌管死期。
And no one has the authority to overcome death.
但是死亡这场战争呢，没有一个人可以免去。
And so the war of death is not something that anyone can be spared of.
但是如果我们再仔细思想这一段经文，48节到52节，32章的这段经文，
but if we carefully re-examine this verse from chapter 32, from verse 48 to 52,
这个摩西真的是神所爱的。
and Moses indeed was somebody that was greatly loved by God.
神告诉他死亡的地点，
And he was told the location of his final death.
神告诉他死亡的时间，
And he was told the time that he would die.
让他可以做一个预备。
And so that he can make the due preparation.
所以神让他爬到山顶上，还有一个目的，就是可以看见神所预备的为以色列人所预备的迦南地，在49节。
God allowed him to ascend to the top of the mountain for him to be able to view the land that God had prepared for the children of Israel.
摩西求神可以进到迦南地。
And so Moses asked God for him to be allowed to enter into the land of Canaan.
神说 no， 不可以，你不能进去。
And God said, no, he's not allowed to go inside.
但是呢，神用一个方法，因为他进去主要是要看嘛，看那个美地嘛。神不让他进去，其实呢，用一个不一样的方法来满足他想要看的目的，就是到高山让他去看到这个迦南的美地。
And Moses wanted to really see the land, so God allowed him to have a different way to ascend the high mountain and to see this wonderful land of Canaan.
所以有时候神像我们来看以弗所书3章20节。
And let's turn to Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20.
以弗所书3章20节。
Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20.
3章20节。
Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20.
神能照着运行在我们心里的大力，充充足足的成就一切，超过我们所求所想的。以弗所书3章20节，请你读。
And Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. Now to him who is able to do the exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us.
真的呢，圣灵的能力，神的大能大力呢，可以成就一切，而且是充充足足的成就一切，而且是超过你所求的、所想的。
Indeed, the power of the Holy Spirit is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us.
你想看，神说不，但是却不能进去看，但是又提供一个方法给你看。
And you wanted to see it, but God says no. But God actually allow a different way for you to see.
那这边特别提到说，你要爬到那个高山才看得到。
And here it is said that you have to ascend to the high mountain to see this.
我们中国话说这个登高必自卑，行远必自迩。你一定要慢慢爬到最后到高处你就看得清楚山下的一切。
And so the Chinese proverb said that you have to slowly climb to the top of the mountain. So this way you'll be able to view everything that's beneath and have a very good perspective.
所以如果你有去过夏威夷呢，你可能爬过那里的钻石山钻石头山 Diamond Head Mountain
And so if you've been to Hawaii, it's possible that you have climbed the Diamond Head Mountain.
那你到最顶上它有一个指示牌告诉你Waikiki 在哪里 Honolulu 在哪里，这个它把四方向的一个地理呢都给你标示出来。
And once on top of the mountain, it would have a sign pointing out where's the Waikiki Beach, where's Honolulu, and all the location of the major destinations.
那我们刚刚唱的诗他说升起我心，游览于天国。
And the hymn that we just sang that before that, it says that my heart would be lifted onto heaven.
那所以其实今天我们要游览天国，我们的心也要往高处爬。
And so if we want to tour heaven today, that our heart must ascend to higher ground.
所以我们不要定睛只有在这个世界上这些看得见的都会过去。我们要定睛呢在神的事情上面看不见的才是永远的。
And let's not be fixated on the things that we can see in this world, because one day everything will disappear. But actually, we should set our sight onto the things that's unseen in heaven.
如果我们再看32章的52节生命记51节。
And let's turn back to Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 51.
神再一次的讲说，为什么你不能进去呢？
And so God spoke again that why were you not allowed to be inside?
因为你在逊的旷野，在米利巴呢没有在以色列人面前尊我为圣。
And because you have trespassed against me among the children of Israel at the water of Meribah Kadesh, in the wilderness of Zin, because you did not hallow me in the midst of the children of Israel.
所以你到山上看进不去，你要记得，因为你没有尊主为圣，尤其在众人面前。
And so the reason that you're not allowed to be inside, because you did not hallow me in the midst of the children.
我们都记得米利巴事件，是不是？
And all of us remember the incident happened in Meribah, right?
以色列人没有水喝，摩西很生气。
And Israelites had no water to drink, and Moses was very angry.
因为他们又再一次吵闹。
And because they were being very rowdy at the time.
摩西就生气了，就说呢，难道我可以让这个磐石出水来给你们喝吗？
And so Moses was angry and said that, how is it possible that I can allow this rock to have water for you to drink?
本来神叫他吩咐磐石出水，他就用以往的经验击打磐石，在生气当中击打磐石，让它出水。
And originally, God wanted him to command the rock so this way water would flow. But he used his own experience, and he actually strike the rock with his staff, and the water would flow.
神跟他说：“因为你们不信 也不在百姓面前尊敬我。
And God said that because you did not believe and you did not hallow me in the midst of the people.
所以弟兄姐妹，今天呢，我们真的要学习敬畏神，
And so,
尊主
brothers and
为圣。
sisters, today we really have to learn how to fear God.
我们看马拉基书1章6节，
And let's turn to Malachi chapter 1, verse 6.
马拉基书1章6节，
In Malachi chapter 1, verse 6.
马拉基书1章6节，
And Malachi chapter 1, verse 6.
藐视我名的祭司啊，万军之主对你们说：儿子尊敬父亲，仆人敬畏主人。我既为父亲，尊敬我的在哪里呢？我既为主人，敬畏我的在哪里呢？你们却说我们在何事上藐视你的名呢？请读。
A son honors his father and a servant his master. If then I am the father, where is my honor? If I am the master, where is my reverence? Said the Lord of his host. To you, priests who despise my name, yet you say, in what way have we despised your name?
神说，尊敬他的人在哪里呢？
And so God said that, where's my reverence?
儿子要尊敬爸爸，仆人要尊敬主人。天父就是我们的爸爸，就是我们的主人。可是没有人尊主为大。
And a son honors his father, and a servant honors his master. And the Lord is the father and the master, but nobody really honor him.
所以弟兄姐妹，我们要学习玛利亚，她说：“我心尊主为大。”
And we have, brothers and sisters, we have to be like Mary, whose heart yearned to be respectful and put God the greatest.
我们的灵以我们的救主为乐。
And our spirit will delight because of the Lord.
因为不尊敬神呢，真的，我们如果看生命记啊，神1次、2次、3次都提到他应该被我们尊崇。
And because without any reverence to the Lord is really bad, because you can see that in the book of Deuteronomy, God said it once, twice, and 3 times that he has to be respectful.
那我们谈到摩西最后旅程的一个心愿，跟谈到他最后旅程的一个终点站。
And so we have talked about one of the final wishes of the life journey of Moses, and his final wish of in the last destination.
我们再来看他最后的一个行程。
And we can look at his last destination or journey.
我们来看34章1到6节，生命记34章1到6节。
Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 1 to 6.
生命记34章1到6节。
Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 1 to 6.
34章1到6节。
Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 1 to 6.
1到6节，摩西
Verse
从
1 to 6.
摩押平原登尼波山，上了那与耶利哥相对的比斯加山顶，主就把基列全地直到但、拿弗他利全地、以法莲马拉西的地、犹大全地，直到西海南地和棕树城耶利哥的平原，直到索尔，都指给他看。第4节，主对他说：“这就是我向亚伯拉罕、以撒、雅各起誓应许之地，说我必将这地赐给你的后裔。现在我使你眼睛看见了，你却不得过去那里。”第5节，于是主的仆人摩西死在摩押地，正如主所说的，主将他埋葬在摩押地伯昆尔对面的谷中，只是到今日没有人能知道他的坟墓。我们看到最后摩西来爬了这座山那这是他人生最后的一个旅程。
And from this passage, we can see that Moses ascended onto the mountain, and this was the final journey of his life.
那我们看到他爬到尼波山到最后到毕斯加山顶。
And so we can see that he climbed up to Mount Nebo to the top of Pisgah.
那尼波山呢，大约海拔680米哈。
And it has an elevation about roughly 680 meters.
那毕斯加山呢，大约海拔802米。
And Mount Pisgah would have a sea elevation of 806
所以他爬上尼波山，大概再走了2.5迈，爬到相邻更高，大概100-200米的200米左右的100-200米左右的毕斯加山顶。
And so after climbing to Mount Nebo, he climbed another 200 meters to the top of Mount Pisgah.
那你想想看120岁还可以爬这么高这样的一种山
And can we imagine that being so elderly and advanced in age, he can still climb to such high mountain?
所以圣诗章第7节说，他连120岁，眼睛没有分花，精神也没有衰败。
And chapter 34, verse 7, Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not dim, nor his natural vigor diminished.
所以这真是一个福气
And indeed, this is truly a blessing.
真的，我们有时候年纪大了耳朵背了，眼睛模糊了，这个骨头也弯不起来就是直不起来。
And indeed, and when we get old, it's possible that we would have difficulty of hearing or seeing, and we cannot strengthen our back because of weakness in our bones.
小弟的父亲连80岁左右。
And my father is about 80 years old.
去年他还可以去公园这个浸一浸水，没有办法游泳了青年公园浸一浸水，没有办法游泳了可是今年呢他都一直躺在床上。
And last year he was able to go to the park and maybe soak in the water, but he would not be able to swim. But this entire year he has been bedridden.
所以我们觉得摩西真的一个工人特别蒙福
And so indeed Moses was a worker that was truly blessed by God.
那如果我们再仔细想一般人没有办法控制自己出生的时间跟死亡的日期。
And if we think carefully that the ordinary man would not be able to control the time of birth and his death.
但是摩西呢，他应该可以来控制他死亡的日期
but it seems like Moses, relative to comparison, he was able to decide the time of his death.
因为神只跟他讲，你爬到山顶就走了，但是没有跟他讲你什么时候爬。
And because God said that after you ascend to the mountain, then you will pass away, but God did not really tell him when to ascend.
这也是摩西晚年的一个恩典。
And this was another grace during Moses' advanced age.
那我在想神跟他讲去山上可以看在他的观念也只是说，哎呀，用我的肉眼看我可以看到的一些迦南美地而已。
And so I'm thinking that because God allowed Moses to see the land of Canaan, so he just possible that he thought that he could only view the wonderful Canaan with his eyes.
但是如果我们仔细读很多解经家都觉得这是一个意象他上去呢真的神给他看到比肉眼可以看到的更大更广
And but many of the Bible scholars felt that this was actually a vision because once he ascended onto the mountain, he can have a broader and wider perspective of the land.
特别提到说呢，第34章第3节的最后一句话说，神都指给他看，神好像是向导哦，然后呢跟他讲哦，这里就是西海，这里就是南地，这里是拿弗他利，这里是以法莲、马拿西。
And it seems like in verse 3 that everything was shown to him. It appears that God is like a tour guide here, would point out the different locations, such as this is Naphtali, the land of Ephraim, and Manasseh, and the land of Judah, and this is the Western Sea.
如果你第一次到纽约爬这个帝国大厦的顶端，
If you climb the Empire State Building for the first time in New York City,
你可能也不知道哦，那里就是这个 Verrazano Narrow Bridge 那里就是 Williamsburg Bridge 那些桥的名字你可能都叫不出来。
and it's possible that you would not know that this is the Verrazano Bridge or this is the Brooklyn Bridge. Maybe you would not know the names of the different bridges.
那其实毕斯山我们刚刚说的只有800米左右，其实耶路撒冷比毕斯山还高所以如果你从耶路撒冷的方向看去，怎么可能看到西海呢？怎么可能看到地中海呢？看不到的。
And so we have said that the Mount Pisgah was only about 800 meters, but the elevation of Jerusalem is actually a lot higher than the Mount Pisgah. So it's impossible for you to see the West Sea or the Mediterranean Sea from his location.
尤其它可以从但一直看到南地，这个是从北看到南呢，这个从肉眼在800尺的800米的山几乎是不可能的事情，是不可能的事情。
And he was actually to be able to see all the way to the South Plains. Because on an elevation of only 800 meters, this seems like it's actually very impossible.
你可以想象，它好像有一个无人飞机一个 drone 用那个无人飞机在看这个全地的美景
And it seems like he was flying a drone, that he had a very good perspective of the entire land and area view.
所以好像他不能进去，他人生有大大的遗憾。
And this appears that he was not allowed to go inside, and then he had a big regret in his life.
想不到神在灵里给他看到一个这么仔细、这么漂亮的地方，而且亲自当导游跟他介绍。
But not knowing that in spirit, God was able to allow him to see such detailed image and very accurate depiction of the land, and God was personally a tour guide.
我想他走的时候一点儿遗憾也没有。
And I would think that when he departed and passed on, he would have no regret left.
最近我常常跟我爸爸联络。
And recently, I have been communicating with my father quite frequently.
他常常跟我说，不晓得为什么神这一辈子这么爱他。
And he would tell me that he would not know that how come God loved him so much his entire life.
然后他想到都会在棉被里面偷偷掉眼泪。
And when he thought about this, he would secretly weep inside his blankets.
他说他已经准备好了他可以回家了。
And he said that he has prepared and ready to go home.
他只希望不要太痛因为癌症会闷闷的痛他那个癌症会闷闷的痛。
And he just feel that he doesn't want it to be too painful, because with cancer patients at the very end, you would have this very blunt pain inside of your body.
所以我们看到摩西生命的最后旅程是那么的美，我们也很希望我们自己生命的最后的旅程 也充满了感恩充满了神的恩典。
And we can see how wonderful Moses' final life journey is, and we're hoping that for ourselves that our final journey could be as wonderful and full of God's grace.
34章的第8节这样讲34章的第6节这样讲。
In chapter 34, verse 6, it says,
他说呢，神的仆人摩西对不起，那个神将他埋在摩押地伯昆尔对面的谷中。
And God buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor.
这个真的很福气哦，神亲自来为他埋葬。
And this was actually this is a great blessing because God personally buried him.
然后接下来讲说到今天没有人知道他的坟墓，换句话说，他死的时候没有一个人在他旁边
And in other words, no one knew his grave until this day. So when he died, no one was next to him.
我们有时会想说，我们走的时候，希望很多人都在我们的旁边。
And often we would think that by the time of our death, we're hoping that many people can be around us.
但是有时候这不一定会发生哦。
But often this may not necessarily be the case.
我最近读到一则新闻，
And recently I came across the news.
有一个50多岁的人呢，他去做 cruise， 那想不到这个游轮呢，里面有这个新冠状病炎的一个蔓延，肺炎的蔓延。
And there was a person about 50 years old. He recently went on a cruise, but not knowingly that inside this cruise there was the new coronavirus.
他也得到了。
And he contracted it.
后来人家用飞机把他送到亚特兰大的医院。
And so later on, he was brought by airplane to a hospital in Atlanta.
那你知道这种病都是要隔离吗？
And we know that with this type of disease, that you have to be quarantined.
他在走之前呢，没有一个家人在他身边。
And when he died, there was not a family member that was beside him.
只有透过网络他的孩子跟爸爸这样说。
And only through the internet, his children said to the father,
说爸爸，谢谢你这辈子这么用心的把我抚养长大。
And Father, I really thank you that you have put a lot of effort and focus into my upbringing.
他的媳妇跟他说，
And his daughter-in-law said to him,
爸爸，谢谢你生了一个这么好的人给我当先生。
and Daddy, I'd like to thank you that you have born such a good person and it can be my husband.
所以我们会觉到，在这个时代其实我们走的时候也不一定会有人在我们身边。
And we realize that in this generation, by the time of our passing, we may not have people next to us.
那其实如果读这一段，就会觉到这个在神的眼中有没有人站在哪里，有没有人知道其实都不是最重要的。
And by reading this passage, we realize that whether there's people next to you or where you're buried, it's not the most important.
最重要的是神纪念我们，神爱我们。
But the most important thing is that God will remember us and God loves us.
重要的是我们跑完当跑的路，信了守住了所信的道，而且能够打过了那个美好的仗。
And the important thing is that we have completed the race that we have to complete. We have believed in the word that we believed, and then also we have fought a good fight.
我们以上谈到摩西一生的最后旅程。
And so this is the life journey of Moses.
我们谈到他最后的心愿，
We talked about his final wish
他最后的终点站，
and his final destination in life
最后的行程。
and his ultimate destination.
以上彼此共勉啊。
And
我们来
so
祷
I
告，
use this as mutual encouragement. So we will now pray,
我们祷告15分钟，
and we will pray for about 15 minutes.
我们一起同心跪下祷告。
And let's all kneel down and pray.